It's another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast, but are you subscribed? If not, make sure to like, share and subscribe. Spread the word about the Christian Reeve Podcast and enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is a professional etch-a-sketch artist. I didn't even know this was a thing. It's really cool. She was all the way from the USA. Her name is Jane Labowitch, but she goes by the moniker Princess Etch. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. Very good. This is exciting. I actually got a message from a friend of mine. He's been on the show before. Shout out to Bartel. And he basically said, you need to get this person on your show. And I was like, this is really cool. And I knew nothing about this, right?
Oh, cool. Cool.
I just wanted to quickly confirm, because this is what he said. He said that you are I believe the fourth American, one of four people in America that actually does this, like these etch-a-sketch designs. Is that correct?
There are two of us that do it full time, and then there's a small handful of us that do it to some degree of professionally, and then the largest pool is people who do it more as a hobby. But even that largest pool is still very small, like 100 people maybe. It's a very small world, the world of etch-a-sketch artistry.
So what's like that community like? I mean, given that there's not like a lot of people doing it, like do you have like a support network for that, or is there, like, for example, when you were starting out, did you kind of like learn from them, or did you just do it yourself, kind of thing, like learn from scratch?
Sure, great question. So when I started, the community was very different than it is today. And it's all thanks to the internet that I was able to find other etch-a-sketch artists. So I started sharing my work online around 2007. And back then, the social media sphere was very different. So My primary source of finding other etch-a-sketch artists was through a website called Flickr, which,
Flickr.
talk about blast from the past. Yeah, so Flickr was my first place, and then MySpace. So,
good times.
Yeah.
Good times.
Nowadays, the community is mostly centralized on Facebook. We have a really active, small, little etch-a-sketch artist group. And we also have a pretty good presence on Instagram and TikTok. So we're pretty familiar with each other through our usernames and recognize the work that each other creates. And it's overall super supportive.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. When I was looking through all of the different platforms that you're on, they're all kind of like really varied according to like things like numbers and stuff. And to be honest, like numbers don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But someone in your position who's, you've been on various chat shows, you're beginning to pick up momentum and stuff with this. It's just really interesting. Like, to give you an example, when I dropped on your YouTube, I was like, what? I would expected you to have like hundreds of thousands of subs at this point. But then if you go on another platform, I guess ones that are more geared towards like short form content, it's blowing up. It's doing really well. So I guess it's maybe just time, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting to me because I have been sharing art online since 2007. And honestly, it's only in the last year since pandemic began that I've actually started really gaining traction. And for me, I haven't yet determined how important those numbers are because I haven't been able to take them out for a spin yet for my work. But for example, before pandemic began, I wasn't on TikTok yet, and TikTok is my most popular platform. I've got like 140,000, something like that. And then you've got YouTube, which is at like 37,000 or something. But when pandemic began, I was only at like 500 subscribers. So it's really interesting to see how people in general are just communicating, or not communicating, but consuming so much more digital content right now. And it's put me in a really great position as a content creator to get in front of more faces since everybody is still at home. But it is strange that there is like such a disparity from app to app. Like, for example, I feel like I've put the most effort just across the board over the last few years into Instagram, and every single follower on Instagram feels like a slow climb up a rickety ladder. Like it's been a tough job trying to, grow there. But I've, from everybody that I've talked to, it's just a really difficult app to gain a following on. Yeah.
I'm in the exact same position, except for like my stuff isn't really going viral per se, but like on my main YouTube account, that's the one that's like the slow build. Like it's very slowly getting to 600. But then I started experimenting with this short stuff because my friends were like, "Why are you not on TikTok? Why are you not doing reels?" And I was like, "Oh, I suppose I could do that, but I don't know what to do." Right. And then you start doing it, you start experimenting, and then it blows. Like, for example, I had a guest on the other day, and what I always do from these podcasts is I'll cut stuff up. I'll put longer clips on YouTube, and then I'll put the shorter clips on Instagram Reels, TikTok, etc. And like one of them randomly has just blown up and got like 20k views, and it's literally just us discussing something about Nintendo for like 60 seconds. And I just don't understand the logic behind that, because with what you're doing, it makes a lot more sense because it's kind of perfect for those platforms, especially in I suppose like the tutorial style of things, like people that want to learn how to do this themselves, arty people that are kind of like, maybe I have got a bit of a skill or a flair for creativity or art, and like, oh, that looks like something I could do, or maybe it's just fun to kind of work with etch-a-sketches because it's like retro and whatnot. And so basically my point is it makes a lot of sense for it to work there. But I don't know, for you, do you kind of find it easier making the short form stuff, or is it easier to do the long form? Like, where do you sit on that?
I feel like for the last few years, I really have been gearing my content toward short form already. For example, because Instagram used to have a strict 60-second video limit already established, I was already working within those parameters. So when TikTok rolled out, the most difficult transition for me was starting to film vertically. That felt like a sacrilegious thing to do. I was actually really probably way more hesitant about doing so than I should have been. But I also thought that would penalize me on YouTube, though I never could have predicted that YouTube would come out with a feature called Shorts, which only benefited me because they were taking vertical content that was basically cloning TikTok, right?
Right. Yeah, of course. Of course. Well, every platform's copying each other at this point. And I guess it makes sense. I mean, the frustrating thing, it's not really a frustrating thing, but I've been experimenting with this shorts thing, like I said before, and I've been doing it on YouTube as well. And like one of my channels, that's like a second channel, was sitting on something like 60 subs, and it's flown up to like over 100 at this point, just from these really, really short clips. And I'm sitting there scratching my brain because it's like, I mean, I don't know. What I'm saying is like, there's no pattern to this. There's no like clear things like, okay, I should only do this stuff, or like, you know what I mean? It's like so random, like what will actually start getting some attention. But
yeah, I definitely haven't been able to crack the code either, even though I've amassed a nice audience on TikTok specifically. It still confounds me as to what goes viral and what doesn't. Like, for example, like a week ago, I spent so much time and put in like for me, I put a lot of production value into one specific video. I shot a bunch of B-roll. Like, I never shoot B-roll. I usually just go candid straight with my cell phone. And I thought, like, this is gonna go awesome. It was topical. It was perfect. And of course, the thing that you put all the work into flops. And then the thing that you shoot on the fly, the silly thought that popped into your head, goes viral. So it's like, I don't know.
What is that? It doesn't make any sense. It's like the less effort you put in, the better it'll do. It's like,
and you almost feel guilty about it because you feel like it's unearned, and you then get resentful that the content that you put the most heart into doesn't seem to hit anybody. It doesn't seem to have an audience for it. It's a weird thing.
One of the things I've been pushing with sort of what I've been doing lately is trying to focus on like building a community as opposed to like, creating content for the purpose of getting views or the purpose of getting subs or whatever. So like, what's your community like? I know that's a very broad question, but like, what are they saying? Do you get like a lot of specific requests? Are they leaning towards like different, I don't know, like popular culture things? Like, what's your community like? And like, how do you sort of work with them to grow and stuff?
Oh, that's a great question. So my community is pretty, demographically speaking, across the board, it tends to be more female leaning. Also, it tends to be more kind of millennial age, but also thanks to TikTok, it's gotten a lot younger. And thankfully, I tend to attract the kind of audience that I think I'd want to be friends with already, which is really cool. A lot of people make requests for things that I already would want to draw in an Etch-a-sketch. Whenever I do conversations over live streams, we tend to talk about things like anime and pop culture and memes. And I think especially making the meme-specific content really connects me with the kind of audience that I want to be hanging around, you know? People who like get the joke. In a way.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because as before we came on, I was kind of, I guess you could call it networking. Like I just like to have fun and get involved in this meme culture because it's fun at the end of the day. You know?
It's a blast, yeah.
And like sometimes I'll literally will just go on there and just type like funny comments on people's videos and whatnot. And like it's amazing how that can help you to grow your audience, because it's like, if you're trying to like push your content, like, hey, come check out my thing, hey, please subscribe to me, like no one reacts to that. But if you're kind of like just trying to like form a relationship, or you know, even just have some fun, people react really well to that. And then sometimes if you're lucky, you know, they'll share your stuff, they'll I don't know, like just subscribe to you, whatever, you know, like it works that way.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in just creating content that you believe in and that provides value for your audience. There's a lot of, I've been thinking for a while about making a video about this. There's a lot of tropes on TikTok specifically that are basically the creators trying to manipulate the user base into following them. You know, there's the classic like for part 2, there's the don't let this flop, there, like, you know, wait for it. Like all of these little things, it's like, it's so like asinine to me. It's like trying to pander to me to try to get me to stick around. It's like, well, can't your content speak for itself? Like, why do you have to work so hard to try to trick me or guilt me, which I think is way worse, guilt me into enjoying your content. I want to be able to just provide something that somebody is already interested enough in seeing to want to stick around and subscribe of their own volition. Now, I think to a fault, I don't like promote myself hard enough. Like, for example, when I do YouTube videos, it's very common for content creators to have a little end card that says, you know, please follow and subscribe or something like that. And it's definitely like totally okay at this point. It's very common for people to say like, comment, subscribe, yada, yada, or, you know, comment if you think that this or that. And I don't do any of that. And I know that, you know, triggers the algorithms better if people actually engage. But my hope is that people are already interested enough in engaging with my content to kind of do that of their own volition. I don't want to have to, you know, pull someone by the ear to get them to, you know, to interact more with my content. So that's my personal philosophy on it. And has it benefited me or hindered me? Who knows? Maybe if I was pushing harder, I'd have a bigger audience, but I also don't want to feel like I'm forcing people to enjoy what I make. I just want people to find me and stick around. And that's how I find all my YouTube content. Like, I subscribe to hundreds of people and I just find them of my own volition. I never need to be reminded to subscribe if I enjoy something. I just do it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, like I have introduced those calls to action off the advice of friends, but I keep it very short, very minimal. Like,
yeah, and I think it's okay to do that. I do think it is. I think I need to do that more. But there's a fine line in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the creator and what the content is. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, when I'm releasing like music content, I put it right at the end. And so like they've seen the whole song and then they can, you know, if they want to subscribe, they can. There's like a reminder, I suppose, but it's not like impeding the video. And the same as with your content, I feel like it would be unnecessary because it's all predominantly stuff where you're doing the design, right? So if there's like a random clip of you going, oh, hey, subscribe, like it probably would work, but it's like, I don't know, that's not why people came to the video, you know? Whereas if you're doing like a tutorial, like where it's like you in the video and like you're showing it off and stuff, like I guess it can kind of work there. So I guess it depends on the type of content you're delivering and stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I have been trying to diversify my content more. It used to be pretty much strictly time-lapse, but I've been working more toward putting myself in front of the camera more because people seem to connect with me a lot better when they see me and hear me talk about my stuff. Like even I did a poll recently on YouTube where I asked people, what kind of content do you want to see the most? And what I got as the top voted piece of content was people who want to see me do time-lapse videos, but do my narration over it. because I like to share a quick little story about maybe what I'm doing or something related to the franchise or whatever I'm creating. It seems to connect a lot better with people than just putting stock music on top of footage.
I think like, again, pushing on this like community narrative, I think once you start getting to that point where people are talking to you and leaving you comments and saying, oh, hey, I wish you'd do this more, or like you say, when you reach out and they say something back, I think then you can start diversifying a bit more and creating that kind of community focused content as opposed to just like what you normally do. But yeah, I think it as harsh as it sounds, like, people have to care about you first, and it's like this is one of the reasons why, like, if you look at my content online, like, you won't see me do a lot of like vlog or live stuff. Like, I do it, but I focus more on creating the stuff that I know is gonna draw attention to the channel, because I'm trying to build that community. And right now I'm just some guy, you know, trying to build stuff, so it's like, oh, who cares like what you do in your daily life, you know what I mean? But if people are asking, then of course, then, you know, it's an opportunity, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that, especially in the last few months, I have started answering a lot of that kind of question. And the just natural engagement that I've gotten from those kind of dialogues has been fantastic. People asking me what is the day in the life of an etch-a-sketch artist? You know,
Right,
questions like that, where it's like, you know, it's funny. I feel like I have answered it a million times, maybe one-on-one with people, but maybe it is time to record that into a video and really go in depth about how I'm even able to conceivably make a living doing this. You know, I understand people are very skeptical about it for good reason.
Like, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm probably going to ask you a really obvious question here, but
Sure.
there are going to be some questions here that, you know, well, my audience won't know, but like other people who are familiar with you will have heard. So I do apologize for that. But
No
I
worries.
am intrigued. I would like to know personally, like, how did you actually get into this? Because clearly you have an art background. You know, I can see that you have a BFA in illustration that you studied. So, you know, it's definitely that you started from a young age and realized, I'm going to be an artist. This is going to be, you know, my career in some shape or form. But where was the point where you kind of realized, like, okay, I'm going to try this? Because it's particularly interesting that you said that you started doing this in 2007, because back then, I mean, we did have, I suppose, platforms that, you know, would what you could do something with, but like not to the same extent that you can now. Like, going viral was extremely difficult. It would be, I don't know, with very random stuff. Like, if you take YouTube, for example, I mean, one of the biggest clips in that era was, you know, a kid biting his brother's finger.
Yeah, I was thinking Charlie bit my finger. That's really funny that you said that one.
Do you know what I mean? It's like the landscape's changed a lot. And
Yes.
now it's more about, as you said before, delivering content of value. I suppose it's, in a way, it's become like Netflix or HBO, where people, you know, they subscribe to a particular person and they want consistently high quality stuff, and they want that interaction. You know, it's in the major difference between, say, YouTube and HBO and Netflix and all those platforms is they go and make their programs, they release it, and then everyone says what they think. And then, you know, in the interim period, maybe they'll take that information and use it to make a better follow-up season, maybe not, whatever. But with YouTube, it's like a constant kind of interaction, a constant situation where people are giving you feedback, good or bad, and that's shaping what you do. So, like, bringing it back, like, how did you actually get into this? How did this become something? I suppose I want to take it back to the moment that you were like, okay, let's try something. What are we doing here?
Yeah, so I feel like for me there was more than one concrete moment. For me, I started with Etch-a-Sketch when I was around 4. I'd always been tinkering with it. I inadvertently taught myself how to do anything I wanted on an Etch-a-Sketch without realizing that other kids weren't obsessed with it like I was. And I didn't realize that it was something other people couldn't do until I brought one to school in 8th grade. And I was around age 12 by that point. So I already clocked in 8 years of time playing with this toy. And that's when I realized, whoa, this gives me a disproportionate amount of attention. This is pretty cool. I'm into this. And I was already, you know, you saw that I have a BFA in illustration. I draw, I paint, I work digitally. I dip my hands in a lot of different artistic media. So when I started focusing more on etch-a-sketch, I moved on to high school, and I was able to convince my teacher to let me do assignments in my art classes on etch-a-sketch. And I was sharing those. I started sharing them online around 2007. And you're right. The barometer for like virality was just such a different thing back then. And I definitely didn't experience anything like remotely compared to what you can do now. There just weren't as many resources available. I remember the first time I freaked out at something happening online. So this is a weird aside. So I'm a big fan of the one-hit wonder musician Thomas Dolby. I'm like obsessed with Thomas Dolby. He did the one-hit wonder song "She Blinded Me with Science." And anyways, so I did an etch-a-sketch of Thomas Dolby, and I shared it to his like fan email account or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And I got a response, and I freaked out. I remember I was in like the computer lab in 10th grade. Nobody else in my class even knew who this guy was. It didn't matter to me. I was like squealing with girlish glee, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have the power to connect with people through this strange little medium. I can jump past all of these barriers that most people will never be able to surmount. You know, and I realized there's a lot of power in this toy. But I was still planning to go to school, like beyond high school. I was planning to go to school for mathematics. Like I've always been really into math. So there was a very specific moment one day in my math class in my senior year where I was listening to the lecture and doing the math or whatever. And I looked down and I was subconsciously doodling on the margin of my notebook. And I looked down and it's like a light bulb went off. I realized this is what I want to be doing. I want to be drawing. This is what I'm doing subconsciously while listening to the math. Like I like math, I enjoy math, I'm proficient at math, but I love art. And I knew it was a risk. I knew it was probability speaking of a probably less lucrative career path. It was going to be trickier, a lot more competitive. But I decided in that moment that I was going to pull out of enrollment at the school that I was already committed to and switch gears and go to art school instead. So
yeah,
that was my moment.
that's cool. No, that's cool. I mean, I've had a similar sort of experience, I suppose, although mine was more like full circle. So it was like I spent a long time doing music and creative stuff, and then I stopped and I was like, who am I kidding? And I did marketing and all that stuff, and then sort of got disillusioned and then started doing, I think, acting again, or for the first time. And I was like, ooh, this is like all the other things I've done. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should finally do that YouTube that I always talked about doing. And then it's like, as you say, it's like once you have that moment and you start chasing it, things start happening. And one thing I just want to comment on before we move on as well is like, I think that your boldness, you know, with regards to that emailing that fan account is a very good example of like what creators should be doing. Like, it's not just about the content, it's about, you know, being bold. Like a lot of the people I've reached out to, yourself included, like a lot of the time when I'm doing that, I'm thinking, they're not going to reply. Who am I kidding? But it's like, if you don't try, you'll never know. And here you are on my show. So that tells you everything you need to know about being bold and just trying.
Absolutely. And thank you for reaching out. I'm honored. I really do believe that you have to knock on that door. And I'm still learning that lesson myself all the time. This happened to me a lot when I lived in Chicago. I now live in Maryland now, but for 11 years I lived in Chicago. That's where I went to art school, and that's kind of where I began my career.
So where were you originally from then? So did you move to Chicago then back, or like where did you originally come from?
So I originally came from Michigan, which is very close to Chicago.
Right.
And then, so that's where I was born and raised. And then I moved to Chicago to go to art school. And then at the beginning of this year, I moved to Maryland. Long story short, I was in a long distance relationship, and my boyfriend and I bridged the gap. He got a job out here, so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's what brought me to the East Coast. I haven't seen any of it yet because of pandemic, so I'm in this weird limbo state right now. We only go to the grocery store. That's about it.
Dude, I'm in the exact same experience right now.
Yeah?
I moved to this area of England called Manchester in February of last year. and this was just before the pandemic stuff
Oh
was happening.
no!
So I went out like twice, and Manchester is very well known for its music and party life and stuff, right? Went out
Yeah.
twice, everything happened. I mean, you know, I get to see the city when I do like volunteering and stuff, but mostly it's just driving around and doing donation stuff. But I don't really see like the heart of the city as far as like the party atmosphere and all of this stuff is concerned.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there like,
darn.
I've been here for a year and I feel like I barely know this place.
Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty bummed about when I left Chicago, because I knew I was probably going to be moving by 2021 at some point. So I was looking forward to saying goodbye to everybody, but when everything shut down. So for me, what's helped me is knowing that once this is over, I'm going to be able to fly back and kind of tackle that bucket list, see all those people. And yeah. But boy, I'm bummed. I feel robbed of my goodbye in a lot of ways. And what's going to be really sad is when I come back, I'm going to see everything that shut down, everything that I once, you know, took for granted and didn't realize was going to be hit so hard. So I'll think about that when I get there. But but if anything, I am really excited to eventually see this area. I live really close to Washington, D.C., which I've never visited. And I don't even remember why I went on that tangent, but yeah, so I lived in Chicago. And I found, because I went to art school and I had a lot of friends who were in school with me, it's been really interesting to watch my former classmates take on their own artistic careers. And I was seeing this friend going into this gallery and this friend painting this mural, and they're doing all these wonderful things. And every now and then I think to myself, like, wow, how did they get this opportunity? How did this happen? And one day there was this really cool gallery show, and it was based on Pokemon art for like local Chicago artists. And a few of my friends got in, and I didn't even hear about it until it was like already happening. And I'm like, man, like, I know I'm perfect for this. Like, I love Pokemon, I live in Chicago. And, you know, for a moment, you know, I would stew in this frustration, like, oh man, like how could I not have been a part of this? And I finally realized I need to just message the gallery owner and like, you know, open a dialogue, you know, find out the proper channels to do so. I don't want to be rude, especially when it comes to the protocol for working with galleries. Mm-hmm. But I was like, well, I need to knock on that door. And of course, I opened this dialogue, talked to this person, and they were like, you know, if we would have known about you, you absolutely would have been a part of it. And it's like, see, I just need to ask. I just need to like, because the worst thing they can say is no. And if you don't ask, then it's already no. So yeah, I'm still learning that. I'm still trying to make my own opportunities. And that's where a lot of like organic marketing comes from. I like to say that every post I make online is like a mini advertisement.
Yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to come across as salesy. It doesn't have to be, you know, buy now, big sale. It just needs to be, something entertaining, something that is true to who you are. So you need to be mindful of what you share online. There's another artist that I thought put it so wonderfully. Her name is Jen Bartel. She's a pretty big comic book artist. And she once made this thread on Twitter about how there's this like bank account that every content creator has. And when you post a piece of like entertaining content or something you worked hard on or some kind of creative endeavor, you're depositing into that bank account. And maybe you have a bad day and you want to like vent about it. And you got to be careful about doing that kind of thing. But like when you post something that might be conceived as some degree of negative or something where you're asking something of your followers, you're withdrawing from that bank account. And so the idea is you want to be making more deposits than withdrawals. And I think we all know those people on Facebook that just, it's like every day is the worst day of their life, right? Like, you know, they're like, all they talk about is like, oh, my car broke down. And then, oh, my friend just lost her job and I'm sick. I have a cold. And it's like, all they're doing is taking withdrawals from an empty bank account. And it's like a drag, right? And it's like nobody likes to see their favorite artist complain about, you know, nobody's watching my videos or the algorithms have screwed me. Like, you know, every now and then you're allowed to be frustrated about a thing or two, but you got to be really mindful of it because people are paying attention, and they get turned off when they hear other people like being negative or asking too much of their followers. Like, so it's like, you got to be making those deposits if you want to invest in your relationship with your audience. You need to be providing some kind of content of value. Instead of, every post in a row, it can't just be like, support my Patreon, or, it's like, you gotta make sure, like, well, why should they support your Patreon? Make sure that you're making things that make them interested in the first place, So that's what I've been trying to ascribe by with my things. I think it's totally appropriate to ask of your audience, but I wouldn't personally want to do it. I feel like there's a limit. There's moderation. You gotta make sure to not exhaust your audience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really great way you've put it. To be honest, I've never really heard it put that way, but yeah, it's true. I'm guilty of it. I've done it in the past when I would get frustrated because maybe no one's turned up at the live stream, or no one's commented on this video, no one's watched, and it's like a lot of the time. I'm seeing this more and more as well as YouTube very slowly begins to recommend stuff. Very, very slowly.
Yeah.
It does happen. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like your stuff gets picked up and people start watching. And, there's two aspects to this. One, as you say, being positive, making sure just to not be negative, not to continuously moan about things. It's once in a blue moon, it's all right to be like, I wish it would have done better. But like, just keep it to a minimum. And also this idea of like creating like what I term as like evergreen content. I learned this term from like when I was working for some marketing company one time. And I was just hooked on this idea. Yeah, because if you post stuff that's specific to a very particular point in time, one can make the argument, okay, well, maybe people will look back for reference and it'll be interesting. But a lot of the time, if it is like very specific to that particular day, moment, whatever, people won't really bother to watch it. Like in my previous episode, I had a guest on who's a big Sonic the Hedgehog YouTuber. So shout out to Kalami Hatcher. But we were talking about this and he said that, like he has videos, for example, from like 2 years ago, which were like, I don't know, like leaked game spoilers for that particular year. And, those videos will never get any views ever again now, because there's no reason to watch them. We all know what the things were, and they're just speculation. So they were great at the time, but not anymore. Whereas if you take content like yours, evergreen content, it will always pick up views, no matter if it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it'll always have that kind of value in it. And I think your analogy of this bank account concept is very true. Like I always try to do that with everything I do now, try to make sure that it has this kind of this replayability, I guess, this concept of just being able to always come back to it and watch it. And also I think like enjoy it for yourself as well. Like I know that sounds really weird to say, but if you're a creator, like you should be able to enjoy your own content and be like, yeah, I'm proud of this. This is good. And and I think I feel like I have to remind myself of that too. Like, is this something that I actually really want to make, or am I just following a trend? And I find that here's a really good example. When I really liked what you said about evergreen content, because I find that as an etch-a-sketch artist, I'm often expected to hop on the newest meme. Like I'll post a video and people will say, oh, you need to do this. Like this just came out. You got to hop on this. And it's very rare for me to actually follow through with that because I understand it's such a quick burning candle. Like oftentimes, here's a good example. There was the Bernie Sanders chair meme that just recently happened. We've all forgotten about it completely, right? Like it's like it immediately got eclipsed by something else. Yeah. And
I have never been asked so much from my follower base to create a meme. And I decided to cave. I said, if I don't do it today, it's going to be too late. So I did it, and it did phenomenally on like 1 or 2 social media channels. But then after that, you're right, there's no rewatchability to it. Nobody cares about that meme anymore. And it's like, what was that for? What did it really gain me? Maybe it got me some new followers who stuck around and are now going to see my other content. That's cool. But I used to be a huge trend chaser. I used to be like, new TV show announced, got to make an art piece about it right now. Like, maybe I'm not even fully invested in the show or whatever, but like, oh, it's going to be popular. Oh, new season, Game of Thrones. Like, it's an exhausting way to go about it. And then you develop an audience that only expects you to follow the trends. And they start to, if you're not going to keep that up, like you either need to go all in on that concept. You just can't, like, it's too much for me. So nowadays I do try to go and do more of what I love. Like, for me, the classic evergreen content memes are SpongeBob memes. Those will never die in my eyes. Those are pure gold. They've been around for 2 decades. Like, they age like fine wine. And I love SpongeBob memes. I'm an OG SpongeBob watcher, so I feel like it's authentic to me to create SpongeBob memes. I'm always concerned about making sure to create content that doesn't feel inauthentic. Like I hate drawing things and making videos of things that I don't know much about. Like, right. I don't want to draw if there's a Netflix show that just came out, I don't want to draw the character from the show if I haven't seen the show.
Yeah, of course.
Because I want to be able to have a dialogue in the comments with people. Like, they're like, oh yeah, I can't believe that character died or whatever. And I'd be like, yeah, they sucked or whatever. Like, I want to be able to actually engage on some kind of extra level than just like, here's the meme of the week. Here you go.
I gotta say, people that do that as well, I respect the grind, but at the same time,
it's a grind.
It's like, I couldn't do that myself. Like, I think it's exhaustive. Like, when I look at like YouTubers like I don't know, Drama Alert, Keemstar comes to mind. Like, he chooses to sort of like follow everything that's going on the platform and kind of like round it up and do sort of like a news style show based on that, right? And sometimes I wonder, like, does he never get just kind of like exhausted and think like, oh, I just don't want to do this, or I can't be bothered? Like, because a lot happens, like you said, in the space of like the Bernie thing took like, maybe it was big for a week, and then the next thing, and like sometimes it's even shorter than that. Sometimes a meme will die in just one day, and it's like, I don't know. Like, I feel like if you've got the energy for it and you want to do it, like, fair play, go for it. But I think a lot of us like just don't have that energy, and also,
and honestly, I don't have that energy anymore. Maybe I used to,
right.
But now it's like I'm trying to run a business, and I really want to value my personal time to do things that I actually really care about. Sometimes I do care about whatever the trend is. Like, if it's something that like the stars align, all right. If I feel justified in doing it, I'll do it. But I think I'm done with the days of chasing every bandwagon. Like, I gotta pick my bandwagons.
One thing I want to add to this as well, as a sort of like a closing point, is that like I feel like whenever you're looking at a trend, or certainly whenever I'm looking at a trend, like take TikTok. Here's a really good example. So there's this Eminem song that was picked up from like late 2000s right now, and it's a bit of a sort of, I guess you could say, a meme on TikTok. Can you really say memes on TikTok? I don't know. I feel like older.
Yeah, I think memes is okay. Yeah.
It's going viral. It's basically a pretty cool concept, because the song is like like hilariously over the top, offensive, and just crazy, right? But what the content creators have done is like really creative. They've basically taken this like I guess like 20 or 30 second part of it, and now you're just seeing like loads and loads and loads of videos. I did one myself as well, because I was like, when I look at it, I'm like, can I do something with this that I would like, that I think is kind of creative, that fits with what I'm doing? And if I can't think of anything, I just won't do it. And I think that's a better way to go about it. It's like, if you feel like you can work with it and make it work for you and be something that you're proud of, great. If you're, like you said before, just trying to chase that trend, I think your audience can kind of pick up on that as well,
Yeah. And I've also found, even through TikTok, that there's value in taking an old trend that you love and bringing a little new life into it.
Yes, absolutely.
Like some trends, some memes are just classics at this point. Like certain vines that we still quote all the time,
Yeah.
even though Vine's been gone for forever. Right. And so sometimes like you can find that there's like a sound on TikTok and nobody's used it in months or whatever. But like there's this one meme, speaking of Sonic, it's based on the Sonic fandom. And it's this little kid who's freaking out, and he goes like, your fantasies can never be realized, can they? And like, he's just like way too passionate about Sonic, right? It's wonderful. So that like sound from from this kid, freaking out and having this diatribe as an 11-year-old kid, that had a very big moment of virality, and that was like a long time ago in internet time, like over a year ago or something. And I mean, that might as well be like a decade ago.
It's so true. It's so true. Internet time does not move like actual time. It's
not at all. Like when you think of MySpace, that feels like the Stone Age. And
oh yeah.
And I just remember, I decided like, I love that sound. I think it'd be so funny to do an etch-a-sketch video of it. And I did. I just like recreated the video, like word for word on etch-a-sketch. And the comments are fantastic. It's a bunch of people who look back nostalgically on the meme, which is hilarious to me because they're looking back nostalgically like a year ago, right? And they're just freaking out because they're like, oh my gosh, like I just built street cred with a bunch of people because I did this throwback meme that like, oh yeah, this person knows her memes, like I'm the real deal, I'm a meme historian. Like, not that people are ever doubting my degree in memology or anything, but like, I've been around the block on the internet, and that is a very good asset to have right now.
You can actually study that at university, memology.
Oh,
that's
man.
a legit degree.
Degrees I seriously should have gone for. Yeah. I mean, and I feel
but what could you possibly do with a degree in memology? Like, come on.
I don't know.
It's like when I had
that token person on the History Channel when they talk about the history of the internet.
Some of these degrees are ridiculous. Like, I remember one time I saw I think this was when I was applying for uni as well. There was a degree you could do David Beckham studies. You could study the life and time. It was like something out of what's that show in England? It's like 20 Questions or something. Oh, I don't know. Like when we had this show in England, I'm gonna be slaughtered for not remembering this, but basically it's like really weird. Two people sit in a room, and it's like a blacked out room, and it's like Mastermind. That's the name of the show, Mastermind.
Okay.
And basically they bring like their own topics that they know like a lot about, right? And then they get asked like general questions. Okay. And it's just really weird. It's like interrogation or something. It's like, but I don't know. It's popular in the UK. It's kind of a good show. And like sometimes people genuinely would come with like really ridiculous things, like I don't know, coronation storylines for the last 10 years, and they'll just be experts on that. And it's it's like,
oh man,
I guess that's a use for it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would consider myself an etch-a-sketchologist.
Right.
Yeah. And it's worked out for me since that's the path I decided to forge. But yeah, definitely for most people, a degree in etch-a-sketchology probably wouldn't profit that much.
Speaking of degrees, yeah, like we mentioned before, you did this BFA in illustration. I got two questions with regards to this. Like, firstly, one, would you say it was particularly useful for you in your art career and just everything that you do, like in terms of like what it taught you, what it gave to you? And secondly, would you recommend that people follow this route too? Like, is it better to pursue illustration with it, without it? And the reason I ask is because, like, for instance, in my field, marketing, I did the degree, and then I started working in the field, and then I found that I had to basically just learn from scratch. Like everything I learned at uni didn't apply at all. Now, obviously, art is different. Well, actually, no, it's the same in the context of like you go there to get a skill to use in I suppose a job or a workplace, right? But then if you don't actually receive that, then it's like, okay, you got to start from scratch and essentially relearn again. So all the degree really does is just give you a foot in the door for like interviews. So like for you, did that actually, was it useful? Would you recommend it to other people?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Honestly, I could spend the next hour just on this question alone. So for me personally, I don't regret the degree that I got, but there's a few asterisks that I should really specify. So I think that art school is in a weird place right now, especially in the US, especially with how expensive education is in the US. Um, gosh, it really depends on your financial situation before going into art school. I'll be all cards on the table. The only reason why I was even able to afford art school is because I got an inheritance. My father passed away when I was a kid, and I was allowed to do whatever I wanted with that money. I put all that money toward pursuing my dream of being an artist. And I don't think it was a bad investment for me, but I had that money to use. Now, the money didn't cover all of college. I was still in actually significant debt after graduation. And that's where I really kind of discourage people from immediately considering that as the default option. The thing about an illustration degree specifically is that there's no job that requires an illustration degree. You don't go to school to get the sheet of paper. You go to the school to spend 4 years developing skills as an artist. The sheet of paper is kind of an incidental, congratulatory, you did it, you spent 4 years learning. I've never had to present my degree. Now, I do believe it helped me get my first job. But my first job, I honestly feel like I learned potentially an equal amount, if not even more than I learned in art school. I learned a lot of valuable skills in art school. I learned how to be a better draftsman. I learned a lot about how to communicate a concept to a client, which has always been of major use to me when working with my clients. We learned a protocol and how to have these dialogues. But there's a lot of things that art school didn't cover, like the World Wide Web. It was a very old school kind of school, and that it didn't really, the faculty was older. They never had to depend on the internet to find work, and it was a different universe. So we're learning these techniques and how to draw better, which are fantastic, but we're not learning how to find clients. And this is a problem that is almost across the board with art schools. On top of that, you've got these misleading numbers that they quote you saying 96% job placement rating. Well, they don't specify what that means. Like, what kind of job? Are you talking about a bagger at a grocery store? Are you talking about people who are working in the creative field doing what they want? Like, what? So I definitely, I think I lucked out in a lot of ways. And it's more than luck, of course. But I think that the reason why I have any degree of success as an artist today is partially attributed to my education, but also attributed to the other skills that I learned outside of the classroom. Skills like how to write a professional email, how to come across as a friendly person and be jovial and network, and how to market, how to put together brochures, and how to use different programs that may not have been taught much in college, like things like that. There's a lot of soft skills that I feel like art school can't teach you. I discourage people who have the line of thought that if I go to art school, then I will get a job in art. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. And unfortunately, most of my colleagues that I went to school with have had a lot of struggles, and myself included. It was really hard after I graduated. I definitely don't want to throw my specific school under the bus. I really think they did what they could with what they had, but I think that the educational system, for how much it costs, really needs to do more for its students. And sometimes, especially in art school, the best thing you could do for some of these students is tell them to quit. Like, some of them, it's so sad to say, but some people you could just tell do not have a career in art. They won't even turn their assignments in on time. If they can't turn their assignments in on time, how are they going to meet a deadline for a client? And some people change, some people mature. But if people just don't have the skills, I almost wish that like faculty would speak up and tell them, listen, you're spending $20,000 a year to go to this facility. And I think that maybe you should reevaluate your skill set. It's almost the nicer thing to do. So I think everybody who's considering a career in art needs to really be honest with themselves, not necessarily about their current skill set, but how much are you willing to go into this? How much is all in for you? Do you expect an art career to fall into your lap? Because it's not going to. Even if you go viral, virality just goes like that. It doesn't, virality is not sustainable. It's not a career. And as a freelancer, I can tell, from personal experience, I need to know just as much about finances as I do about making art. And being a good artist does not make you a successful artist.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the business aspect is probably even more important than the actual art skills. I mean, I'll just chime in on this just to kind of put a bow on it. But like with my degree, exactly the same thing. All of the stuff. I mean, in fairness, it was a research-based university. So, and this is the thing that people don't talk about a lot. When you go to a university, pay attention to what their goals are as a university or college. So what I mean by that is if you go to a research-based one, which a lot of them are, they're trying to get you down that academic route. Like university is no longer, completely about an education. It's a business. That's why the fees keep going up. And like one of the things I noticed right off the bat when I joined university was, okay, so I'm paying $9,000 per term. This is the UK, right? Why do I have to pay 150 per term for like textbooks, and why am I paying extra for all this stuff? And then I started realizing like, oh, I don't even need this stuff like to do the degree, and I can get loads of resources online for free. And I was like, okay, so, and then I realized, okay, a lot of the lecturers that are teaching me are selling me their books. They wrote those books for their course to get you to pay. It's a business, man. See it for what it is. And I guarantee in a lot of different courses across many different fields, it's the same thing. And this is the thing, like what you said about like, it doesn't really necessarily set you up for having a career. I completely agree with that. Like all the stuff I learned at university was theory based. I'd mostly learned a lot of it at business school, but all the marketing stuff, I mean, it was mostly just like academic theory and stuff. Like I think only one module I did, or maybe 2 or 3 of them, actually applied to real life. And even those were psychology based. It was more to do with like, customer psychology or consumer psychology and stuff. It was interesting, but when I actually started working in the field, like I started from scratch. My degree, it didn't really mean anything. And I feel like this is an important fact as well. The longer you go in your career, whatever your career is, the more that like things from the past get cancelled out. So now 3 years, close to 4 years down the line with my marketing field, it's rare that anyone asks me about my degree. Like I'm actually pretty surprised. I mean, I graduated in 2017, so I guess it's not like that long ago, but like, I feel like the most recent things that you did are what people care about the most. And particularly with business as well. Yeah. Let's talk about the freelance side of things. So like with your stuff, it's great. You're an artist, you do great stuff, but like, can you actually market that work? Like if people are working with you, you need to be good to work with. You need to know how to you need to be everything. If you're a creator, you got to be a marketer, an advertiser, social media manager, graphic and design specialist, copywriter, you name it, you got to be it. Like being a creator is like jack of all trades. And they most certainly do not teach you these things at uni. Like I feel like a lot of this stuff you learn yourself. So like independent study, as you said, like managing time management, deadlines, all this stuff, like that stuff you learn by yourself. I suppose networking, I suppose it depends on your course. I think I did learn a little bit about that in my degree, but mostly it was just like, there's people around, you start talking, you start collaborating, things happen, right? Being sociable, like you said, it just kind of happens if you just put yourself out there.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of artists are not sociable. And that's, it's okay. If you work with who you are, you can still be a successful artist. And success means different things to everybody. For me, success means self-sustaining, basically. I'd like to be, thriving more than surviving. So success goes in that category too. But yes, I think that you're totally right. The universities, and I don't even necessarily fault them too much for it. I just don't think that a lot of these skills are able to be taught in a classroom curriculum. It's tough. So I loved the school I went to, and there were a lot of things that I gained that had nothing to do with the education, like my social circle in Chicago. I got plugged into a wonderful network of fellow classmates and professors who have had varying degrees of success and might know people. Like I had an illustration teacher who connected me with his cousin who owns a shop that I get my frames manufactured from. So there's all sorts of like weird little benefits like that. And even just being able to drop a professor a line. I graduated in 2013. It's been 8 years. But I went to a pretty small school and they remembered me, and they're so happy to do one-on-ones and do critiques and, chat with me about what's going on and give me further direction. I know not every school is like that. But it's something I don't necessarily want to throw down the gauntlet and say art school bad. But with the internet today, there are so many resources available. You can get one-on-one teaching from your favorite artist if you want for a fraction of the cost of going to art school. I mean, the person you idolize, your favorite illustrator, might be offering one-on-one courses for what, a few $100 maybe? Like, it's incredible what kind of resources are available. So I always try to encourage people to consider those. And a lot of those resources weren't available to me back in the day. A lot of them were, 2009 was a very different time in the internet. But now it's 2021. You can find, there are all sorts of websites just for example, I took 2 classes in web design. Those classes cost me roughly, $4,500 per class. Wow. I could have learned those things by going on Khan Academy or, this or that website. Like, there are websites there for those kind of specific skills where there are so many courses available. It's such a saturated market that you could find very awesome quality education for a fraction of the cost that it might cost you in a classroom environment. Now, with the classroom environment, you've got more accountability and there's value in that. You've got an instructor who's, supposed to be an expert in the field who can help you. But is it really worth $4,500 when you could be paying literally $20 to read from the same textbook? So yeah, I don't want to completely knock the art school path, but from a financial standpoint, I think there are better options out there.
This is why I always ask my guests about, their degrees and if they thought there was much kind of worth in it. And I pretty much always get the same response from people, even myself, I don't look at my degree as a waste of time. On the contrary, right. But it's like, I had that same realization. I look at how much I owe now and, how I could have easily have worked in the field without getting the degree. And, I feel like, especially if you're a content creator or an artist, all you really need is these 2 major things. You need talent that you always work on continuously, and business acumen, which sounds all, ooh, that sounds really serious. It's really not. It's just how you market yourself, how you brand yourself. Are you professional? Like you said, do you meet deadlines? Do you reply back to people formally and often? Do you things like how you sell your stuff, how you price it? Do you undersell yourself, or do you charge too much, or it's just thinking with a business mind, which all of these things you can teach yourself online 100%, and same with the art stuff as well.
Yeah. There are so many fantastic resources out there, and because of the internet, there are so many people you could connect with that they don't have to live anywhere. This is the perfect example. You're here in the UK, and we're talking right now. I have to say, this is a good note on Twitter specifically. Twitter is definitely the place where I have the smallest following, but I still use it because Twitter has been my favorite place to connect with people that I love. Like, I can just directly tweet a completely random person that I'm like, your stuff is great, send. And I have formed fantastic relationships with people just from doing that on Twitter. Like, you can, this is going to sound crazy, but there's this movie that I love. It's a very underrated animated film called Robots. Came out in like 2003. I was watching that movie one day and the credits rolled, and I was just kind of like looking at the names of all the people. And there's this guy, his name is Ryan CS. And I was like, that's an interesting name. I've never seen that specific name. So I go on Facebook, I type it, and there's only one Ryan CS in the world.
Yeah.
And so I just friend requested him. And now we're friends. Like, now we just talk to each other sometimes. Like, I literally just like threw a dart at a cork board and was like, I bet this person's cool. They worked on this movie I love. Like, it's so easy now to connect with people. And, you know, you're not always gonna like be able to connect with everyone. It's not like I can say, I want to be friends with Britney Spears today, you know, but like, you can find cool people. There are so many cool people online, and you can collaborate with them. You can support their content. You can, like, TikTok's been fantastic for that. I just connected with the inventor of Bop It yesterday. I'm a huge fan of Bop It. Yeah, he's got a TikTok. He found my stuff. I'd been following him for a while. Someone tagged him in my recent video, and now we follow each other, and I'm going to go draw a Bop It now. And now we're going to, like, now we know each other, and it's all thanks to the magic of the internet. I love the internet, man. It's so great. It's so cool.
Thank you for sharing. Honestly, I'm loving this. Right now, I want to focus on, you know, how you make your money and stuff. Now,
yeah.
Based on what you do, and you know, with my business brain and stuff, I've already kind of like figured out how you do it. But I want to just play dumb and let you kind of say it in your own words. Now, on your website, you're actually available to hire for events and projects, as well as for paid commissions. So with that sort of process, I presume that a lot of companies and individuals sort of reach out to you and say, hey, we would like you to do this. And obviously, if it's a company, maybe there's more of a long-term deal there, or some sort of thing that you have to work out. Like, what's your kind of process, I suppose, for turning this talent of yours into a business?
Sure. So specifically when somebody reaches out to me via email, first I have to figure out, well, what's the scope of the project? What kind of work do they want me to do? Oftentimes, one of my most commonly commissioned things that people ask me to do is portraits on an etch-a-sketch, just a permanent etch-a-sketch. And that's a whole process. And the 5-second summary of that is I disassemble the etch-a-sketch, remove the powder from the inside of the toy, and then seal it all back up like a sandwich, and the drawing on the screen remains. So that's basically how I make them permanent. It's very messy. It's very time consuming, but that allows me to sell the original drawing and then send it anywhere in the world. I've mailed my art all over the world at this point. So that's my number one thing is people will ask me to create an original etch-a-sketch drawing of something that they're interested in having me do. The more complicated projects come from the bigger companies. I've had the fortune of working with a lot of big companies like Disney, Cartoon Network, MTV. For some reason, Callaway Golf, that one always confounds me.
Hey, why not?
Yeah. I mean, hey, if it's work, it's work. And that's where they have usually a decent idea of what they're interested in having me do. And then I usually step in and help to formulate that concept. Like they might say, so we're interested in maybe you doing a video. And I said, okay, well, what's this video for? Do you have an image in mind? And then we start this dialogue. We go back and forth. I say, well, okay, do you have a reference photo you'd like me to work with? And then, okay, which size etch-a-sketch would you like? Because there's like 4 main sizes I work with. And that all helps to educate me on like how much I would charge for different rates for the amount of time it would take me. Well, what's your deadline? And getting all of these little pieces of the puzzle together to figure out what my quote is going to be. And once we have it all hashed out and figured out like what we're going to do, then we can, they send me whatever I need to get my work going. And then I tell them, okay, you'll have it by this day. If they have a deadline, then they provide that for me. And then I just get to work. And then I send them whatever they need by the date they want. And it's a pretty simple process. It's just, people communicating with one another, like what do you want, and I figure out how to get that to them. Yeah.
Have you ever kind of like turned down projects based on the fact that it like doesn't fit with your brand, or maybe that company or that individual has like bad press and that would probably affect you? Like, has that ever happened to you?
I can't think of a specific person or company that might have reached out that I was wary of. I definitely do turn down projects these days. In the beginning, so I've been freelancing for around 4.5 years now. In the beginning, I took everything I could, even if I wasn't so sure about it. But there are projects that I simply just don't want to do, maybe because
fair enough.
Yeah, like sometimes the subject matter just doesn't for example, like I have a friend who doesn't like to do portraits of people, and I am not as fond of doing portraits of pets on Etch-a-Sketch, so we can kind of like work with one another if we want.
Yeah.
Like refer each other. There are times where maybe I'm in my busy holiday season and I just can't get a project done in time, so I instead will offer to maybe I have a friend who's another Etch-a-Sketch artist, and like I can throw them a bone, or I do what I can to try to get work for someone else when I'm presented with something that I don't want to do. But oftentimes the work that I turn down the most is the work that is like there's no budget. Like that's for me a non-negotiable. There are occasions where like if it's a volunteer opportunity, I can find those myself. I usually don't take solicitations for volunteer opportunities because it's likely not a cause that I'm passionate about, and my time is valuable. So I think it's wonderful to support nonprofit causes, but I've got, I want to be able to pick and choose the ones that matter to me the most.
It surprises me that people reach out to you that aren't charity based or good cause based, expecting stuff for free. I mean, I don't know, that kind of perplexes me a little bit. Like,
that happens a lot. Well, not recently, but it's a trend, and I think it's a trend for, and maybe it's more of an American thing, I don't know, but I do think that a lot of my artist friends have found that nonprofits either have zero budget or very little budget. And
I see, like non-profit organizations.
Yes, right. Yes, nonprofit organizations. Yeah, so that's and there are occasions where I think it's wonderful, and there's the whole dreaded, well, the exposure. Now for me, I don't care about exposure at all. I've gotten enough exposure. I get exposure from companies that pay me just fine. Like I don't need exposure anymore. That doesn't tempt me in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it usually turns me off from the project if exposure is mentioned, even if they pay me.
I want to chime in on this as well. Because,
yeah, please do.
Like, I'm a bit old-fashioned with this. Like, I believe you pay people for their work. Like, even if it's just a symbol pay or something like that, pay people for their work, their time and their effort. And I've had people reach out to me, people in my network, and they're good people, and they're like, oh, Christian, I know that because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I wish I had a team. Like one day I want to have a team for my podcast for doing all my editing and all that stuff. Because I don't like it. I love making content. I'll put all the hours of the day into that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But I find all the editing and the constant messaging and all this stuff, like it's tiresome. And I know that I would benefit from having a team behind me. Now I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, I'll do this for free. And I'm like, I just can't accept that. Like as much as it would help me out, it's like, I don't think it's okay. I think it's cheap, quite frankly. I know that's going to be controversial to some, but like, excuse me, even if it's like just a tiny bit, it's like acknowledging that person's time and effort is worth something, and I understand there'll be people that say like, oh, but what about if it's like an internship opportunity or whatever? But like, look, if you're working for like a major company or like, someone who's a big deal, right? And they've got the funds and stuff and they choose not to pay you, like, don't bother with those people as far as I'm concerned. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and even with someone like me, I don't actually physically have the money to give to these people, but I wouldn't accept it anyway, because I just think it's just, I don't know, it's a bit cheap in my opinion. I think,
Yeah, I think that there's ways you can, like, in the occasion where you may not pay somebody, like there are things that like barters. I know a lot of artists will barter with one another to, you know, collaborate for this or that. But I
Right.
agree. I don't want to. I've had people, especially when my YouTube account like blew up last year, I had somebody who reached out to me. They were very nice. They said, you know, my hobby, and apparently a lot of people have this hobby. I had no idea. My hobby is starting up and helping moderate Discord servers. I would love to help you with a Discord server, which was like a very kind thing to offer. But I turned them down. I said, well, you know, one, I'm not really invested in starting my own Discord server right now. I just don't think I would do it justice or give it the time it deserves to grow the community there. And two, you know, though I'm very flattered by your offer, I think it's, you know, you're just doing all this like work for me completely for free. And also I don't know who you are. Like, to give you like power over my community is kind of a
Right.
scary
Yeah.
thing to do. Like the only person I've ever had help me moderate in any degree is my boyfriend, and he's helped be like in the background and YouTube videos when I'm doing live streams there. Like, he'll help moderate while I'm busy working. And I think like I had you know, sometimes I find that like I'll work with a friend on something, or a friend will get me work, and you know, I've even offered people, if you can help me get workshops here or here, I'll give you a cut of the money.
Right. Yeah.
Or you know, or I'll like, I have a friend who got me a bunch of work, and I designed a business card for them as thanks. Like,
Cool.
so it's like, if you can, you know, provide something in return. I agree. Like, there are people who have, I definitely don't feel like I would be where I am today without help. You know, I've got my network of friends and family and everything that helped me get where I am. And I think it's important for people who are in positions of success to acknowledge that in a public
Absolutely.
way. Because I don't think the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality is the full story. I think people might, you know, look at a surface level at a successful artist and think like, oh, wow, well, they put in the grind completely, but they not know that, you know, for me, like I said, I was able to pay for most of my art school with an inheritance I got. And I know it, I mean, you know, I don't have a father anymore, but I did have the inheritance money, which was a privilege and gave me a step up. Like, I wouldn't have been able to even afford art school. And who knows where I'd be today if I didn't pursue that path seriously, if I didn't really go all in on it. Would I have still pursued art? Would I still have tried to do this thing? I don't know. So I think yeah, it's tricky when people offer to help you for free, because I agree, as an artist, I want my time to be valued, and I want other people's time to be valued too. Yeah.
With regards to like requests and stuff, like what's some of the craziest or weirdest requests you've ever received?
For things I could draw in an etch-a-sketch, or just like in general.
Okay, well, that intrigues me. So I kind of
Yeah,
assumed that everything that you get is etch-a-sketch requests. Like, what other stuff do
yeah.
you get then?
Well, well, I do get a lot of people who will request that I like talk about things like not related to my career, or like, oh, here's a weird one. So I let my nails grow, right? Like, I don't know if I could go close to the screen,
Okay.
and right now they're not that long, right? But I let them grow to a rather long length, and I get very polarizing experiences from it, enough so that I decided to make a kind of salty YouTube video about it. I get people who either are disgusted by it immediately, which whatever, like, to each their own, I guess. And then I'll
Right.
sometimes get people, like, I remember I shared a picture of me like holding an etch-a-sketch. All you saw was my hand and the etch-a-sketch. And I got like 3 different people who DM'd me, and they were like, can you send me pictures of
Oh
your
no.
nails?
Oh no.
Like, like I have learned, if it is possible to
Oh
be
my.
sexualized, it will happen on the internet. Like, and I don't know how different this is as a woman than a man, but like, I mean, so I get a lot of like really, a lot of it, it's like, I guess it's part of the territory, which kind of
Right.
sucks. But like, you know, I'll get some stuff like that, or like I'll have like a TV appearance. Maybe I did a lot of like local news in Chicago and such.
Cool.
And yeah, it's lots of fun. But then I'll get people who slide into my DMs, and like, they don't want to talk about my art at all. They just want to be like, I love your eyes. And it's like, well, I wasn't there to advertise my eyes. Like, you're to talk about my art. You want to buy something? Like, yeah.
I should have assumed that was what you were gonna sort of say. I think in my mind I kind of just thought like, oh, maybe there'd be just some like weird requests like for etch-a-sketches, but yeah, I suppose just in general, if you're gonna be in the public eye, you're gonna get some weird requests.
Yeah, I do get. Yeah, absolutely. I do get people who assume that, oh, she's good at etch-a-sketch. That means, can you paint my boat? Like, they'll ask me like what makes you think that I'm equipped to use, like, to paint a boat, like, I'll get people who do that, like, oh, wow, you're so good at that etch-a-sketch. Can you paint a mural on my kid's bedroom? Like, what? What, like, I mean, in some cases I can do these other things, but like, I'll have people, I remember I had this guy who like saw me at an event and wanted me to design his business card, which, like, I mean, thankfully I happen to have that skill, but like, nothing about what I was doing in that moment should lead someone to assume that I can do this very disparate thing as well. Like, I was drawing portraits on an etch-a-sketch. That does not imply that I know how to design business cards. Like, so I get that kind of thing sometimes where people will just be like, oh, you're an artist, and people just assume like artists can do everything, so the paint my boat one, that one was really strange.
So what are the like most memorable requests you've received? Like, I don't know, maybe heart stirring or good feeling, or just maybe just your favorite ones that you've ever done?
I've done some pretty special renditions. I did one marriage proposal on an etch-a-sketch. That was really sweet.
That's cute.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it's like, it was really an honor to be to be a part of that specific life event, and she said yes, so yay. Yeah. And when I get asked for really heartfelt requests like that, I really feel like I end up befriending the people that connect with me. Like, I end up starting these wonderful conversations with people who reach out to me. And like, for example, I did this project. This was so cool. Last year, right before pandemic began, I got this commission to draw this photo of a husband and his wife, which he was going to give to his wife as an anniversary present, which was very sweet. And we went back and forth and talked a lot about how I was going to go about doing the drawing, but then I got to learn about him and his life. And it turns out that he lives in the DC area. And this is before I knew I was moving to Maryland. So he commissioned me again down the road. And I told him I live near DC now. And so once pandemic's over, I'm going to meet him and I'm going to meet his wife. And he offered to show me around DC. And just so sometimes I get these requests for really personal things that ends up making lifelong friends out of these clients that I get to work with. I send Christmas cards every year, and I end up, every year it's like a wonderful reminder of all these people that are now in my life because of this little toy that I play with, and these lifelong friendships that have formed and special connections. So some of those, I feel like I never thought about how an etch-a-sketch would be the subject matter of choice for some people who have these really special things, but I think it has to do with the fact that etch-a-sketch evokes nostalgia in a lot of people. I've also done some really sad drawings of like people who've passed away. Those are really tough. I did, oh my gosh, the saddest drawing I ever did. I cried. I almost like couldn't do the project because it was like so sad to me. It was there was a son and his father. His father was a police officer, and they had a photo of him walking his son to the bus stop. And later that day, he was shot in action and passed away. And so they wanted me to draw this picture of this father walking his son to school. And it was given to the child on his birthday. Like, Oh, that was the saddest thing I've ever drawn. And like I even felt like, is this the right thing to like give to the kid? I almost like I had to have a really long dialogue with the person, and I said them, I was like, well, you need to give another etch-a-sketch because the kid can't play with it. So I sent another one to them so the kid could like play with it. And it was just, oh my gosh. So like I really never have, and just no idea what people are going to want me to create on an etch-a-sketch. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've done in general, like especially for my own stuff. I'm super like happy-go-lucky. I try to just keep it fun and happy and friendly, and most of the stuff I do is some kind of celebratory thing.
Right.
And if somebody wants to honor somebody and do something, it's like it's a dialogue I'm willing to have. It's definitely something that like I don't want to take it lightly, and I feel like it has to be a long dialogue to make sure that I'm like properly honoring the person. It's I don't want to do anything wrong in that way. It's such a difficult subject.
No, good on you for doing that. That'll mean something forever for those people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's really cool that you do that, and it's so varied as well. Awesome.
I mean, I've drawn golf clubs. I've drawn pie charts for conferences that were used in slide shows. Like, just like the most corporate you could conceivably think of. I've done it. I've done the Disney castles for Disney World. I've done
wow.
I've had such a crazy like variety of subject matters. So I'm always up for something new, and I'm always interested to see what direction I can take Etch-a-Sketch.
So you've appeared on chat shows such as the Kelly Clarkson Show and have been featured in several publications such as the Huffington Post. How are you dealing with the increasing fame and attention towards you and your work? Has it changed your life that much?
So I am really curious to see what life is going to be like after pandemic, because a lot of these things happened during pandemic. But it's so funny because I've got certain friends and some family who are just like, you're famous. And I'm like, I'm like G-list, like I don't know what letter.
Fame is fame, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
I will never forget the first time I was recognized.
Oh, cool.
That was crazy. So I did this piece. This was back in 2016. I was living in Chicago, and I had done this rendition of there's the famous Seurat painting, Sunday on La Grande Jatte. And that painting lives at the Art Institute of Chicago, which is kind of a miracle in itself. It's such an iconic painting. It's so cool we have it. So I sat in front of that painting. I rendered it on an Etch-a-Sketch over the course of 4 sittings. And I posted it online, and it went viral. Like nothing had ever gone viral before for me. And It was picked up by national news outlets, and I suddenly had a press tour in Chicago. Like it was crazy. And at that time I was still working a 9-to-5. So I had to like schedule the news for my off days at work. Like it was so crazy. And I was on my way.
Okay. Can I just cut in for a second? So that job that you were in, like, did your like workers just like your workmates sort of go like, hang on, why were you on the evening news? Like what? Did that sort of happen or?
Yeah. So it was really interesting. I had already put in my 2 weeks at that job before it happened. And so I was basically like settling things there. And it was really hectic actually, because I was training my replacement and just tying all the loose ends. I'd been there for years. So like, I didn't even have time to really acknowledge what was happening on the clock. Like I was like so focused on like finishing everything up at that job. And then I would like, before I even clocked in that morning, I might have already done the morning news at like 7 a.m. So I would like come into work after the morning news. It was like such a like roller coaster of like, whoa, I'm living this crazy life. And oh, now I'm back to normal life. Like, it was like living 2 lives in a lot of ways. So I was on my way to do a a radio show, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like, oh, an etch-a-sketch artist on the radio. All right. There's like no visual element whatsoever to the radio, but I was down for it. So I was on my way to the Tribune Tower to do WGN radio. And I just got off the train and I was like holding an etch-a-sketch with me. And someone was like, is that Princess Etch? Like at the other side of the train station. I'm like, hi. Like, so that, yeah, every now and then I'm recognized. It only ever really happened in Chicago because I'd spent so long in Chicago and had done a lot of things there. So that's always super cool to me. And I always have no idea how to respond to it. So yeah, that's been neat. It also helps that I wear like crazy outfits a lot too. So like people who follow me on social media recognize that I wear like, I wear an etch-a-sketch necklace usually. I wear, something.
I wanted to kind of ask you about that. And like, it's like a weird thing because people wear just what they're comfortable with, right? But you do have a very quirky like dress sense. Is that just something you've always had, or did that kind of evolve out of what you were doing and you were like, I should be more in line with what I'm doing? Or I don't know, like, is that a conscious thing?
So for me, I'd say since high school, I've been wearing like crazy stuff. Most of what I bought came from thrift stores or whatever. So like I was always finding eclectic, kind of kooky, different things that you couldn't just buy at like, whatever local, brick and mortar. And I found that over time, like, it's ironic. I was a super tomboy as a kid. Clothes were the most utilitarian thing for me. I hated that I was a girl. All my friends were guys. And like, I just wanted to like get rough in the mud, like I didn't want to be what I called a girly girl. That was like a derogatory term for me. But then one day I went shopping, it was like 8th grade, and I found a skirt and I was like, this is a pretty skirt. I like this skirt. Cool. And then bam, I started caring about clothes. And now it's like, I feel like my outfits are just, they're a part of who I am. I love wearing the silly stuff and I'm always hunting for like crazy things. And there's even a community associated around that I've gotten really plugged in with. Like I wear a lot of like Japanese fashion. So it's called J fashion. And so there's a whole community of people in the US and all around the world who wear J fashion and they love it. And it's like so cool to have that community of people that I've connected with. And we get together, we all wear crazy stuff. We go to anime conventions together and all that stuff. So, yeah.
So I presume that necklace, you made that yourself, you designed that yourself, or?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. It's called like an eye screw at the top of an already existing etch-a-sketch. So this functions. And then there's these little things, they look kind of like little pearls, but they're called pop beads. They were this big trend in the 80s. And they're these little plastic beads that you could just like pop them apart easily. So you can make them a long necklace, but I usually wear them as like a choker. So I have hunted online for years to find like every color of pop beads that I want and every little tiny etch-a-sketch color so I can match all my outfits with an etch-a-sketch. And
that's so cool.
It's become kind of my trademark for what I wear. Like people know I wear an etch-a-sketch necklace. So it's it's been fun. Whenever I do an etch-a-sketch thing, I try to incorporate at least one piece of etch-a-sketch.
But can people buy that on your website? Can they get that to wear for themselves, or like what kind of merchandise are you doing?
So I've thought about selling etch-a-sketch necklaces. The pop beads I can't sell just because they're like such a limited quantity thing that is more vintage. But people have asked me for years to sell etch-a-sketch necklaces.
You should.
I know. I really should. I really should. It's easier to get the small etch-a-sketches these days, so it's definitely conceivable. I sell all kinds of merchandise. The original art that I make permanent. That's like my top selling and my top price point items. I sell prints of my work where I just photograph the finished art and then people can buy a print of it for a lower price point if the original's not available anymore or they can't afford the original. And then I've got stickers of some of my most popular works and little like buttons, pins. I've thought about expanding more, but I'm also trying to figure out as a business what direction I should go next. I want to provide lower price point items so that all of my fans can conceivably afford a piece of merchandise from me. I like making art accessible to the masses because I recognize most of my art, most people can't afford.
Right.
Like, and it's a luxury. Art is a luxury. Now I have to make it that way because I got to pay my bills and I have to justify the, you know, the time, the cost of materials, the extremely specific niche skill I've spent 2 decades, you know, cultivating, you know, all those things. So yeah. So that's kind of, those are the main things that I sell on my Etsy store specifically. And you know, occasionally I'll do like I'll sell time-lapse videos for different companies. That's definitely one of my more like corporate tier options. So there's like a whole separate tier of products that I really only offer on like a corporate level, like the time-lapse videos and the going to like live events and doing live portraiture. I also do workshops. So I teach the very basics of etch-a-sketch. I work with a lot of like public libraries and like children's museums and such. So yeah, there's a lot of services I offer, a lot of which I can't right now during pandemic, but thankfully I have so many, you know, it's a spider web of options that I'm able to kind of focus on one part during the pandemic and cultivate that further. So yeah.
I presume you've been doing a lot of stuff online then, like online teaching, I guess.
I've been doing a little bit. I started recording videos. I'm so used to doing it in person, but I've seriously considered that's like one of the top things on my to-do list is to put together a pre-recorded workshop that people can just like basically purchase admission to. So it's this kind of like this passive income source.
Right.
Yeah, so that's definitely something I'm interested in pursuing. That's the beautiful thing about being an artist is like we're the masters of our own destiny in a lot of ways. We're not bound by a paycheck given to us by a boss. We can conceivably create our own revenue sources. We can create, like, we can make the life we want if we make the work that, you know, focuses on what makes us happy. So I just, you know, for any artist listening, you can create your own opportunity. You don't have to wait for opportunity to fall in your lap because you can do some really cool things right now.
This is what I'm desperately trying to do right now. I'm just putting like my heart and soul into it. I've earned no, I did earn some money for some voice acting recently, so that's one thing I did. But like other than that, we earn nothing from this. But one day it'll all be different. But no, I totally get where you're coming from. You know, that's awesome.
Yeah, and all the videos I make on, you know, on TikTok and YouTube, like those don't make money either. That's just my passion products.
They will.
Yeah,
that's the thing. That's your YouTube. I'm surprised that TikTok. I was under the impression that after a while you do start to make money from.
You know, I make some money. Like for example, the Creator Fund. I made last month. I made like $70. So it's like, you know, okay, that's part of my grocery bill. That's cool. And through YouTube, it's really weird. It looks like I'd be making more money than I do, but because most of my videos are super short form content, the kind of ad revenue you get, it's such a convoluted thing. I shared a screenshot recently because a lot of my videos have amassed literally millions of views because they've been shared on the shorts feature of YouTube.
Right.
So when you look at a video and you see it has 4 million views, the average Joe is apt to assume like, oh, this probably made thousands of dollars. But the problem is it's being featured on shorts, and through that feature on YouTube, they're not running a lot of ads. So there's no ad revenue to make. And I think I made like something like, there's a video, it got 400,000 views, and I think I made like 96 cents from 400,000 views. Yeah. So it's definitely a different frontier now on YouTube than it used to be. I know some of those older videos like Charlie Bit My Finger, those made deep 6 figs. Like, insane money. It's just such a different, it's a whole different field now. And you have to adapt. But like for me, I want to work so much more toward getting these kind of passive income streams. Like I've got Patreon, I've got that kind
Right.
of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I think because that's what I'm heading towards as well. I think that's where the money is, the sponsorships. If you do like paid things for, like, I presume that when you do stuff for companies, there's probably some sort of like deal there. Do you know what I mean? Like these sorts
Yeah.
of things is where you're going to make the money. And like if you can make some money from views, great. But I think most
Right.
content creators that try to get into it realize that they're probably not going to make their money from views.
Right. Yeah. For me, I find that most of my money comes from the corporate gigs. I'll
Okay.
get a handful a year. So I'll get one job that'll pay 3 months of income for me. But
Cool.
it might be pretty quiet otherwise. Like
Right.
freelance for me has been very, highs and lows. But having the monthly passive income has been so nice to kind of help. Just like I've had months where I would make thousands and thousands of dollars one month, and then the next 2 months I'd make like $30. Like it's crazy.
Wow.
Just how it can be, how highs and lows. And so for me, I've learned to budget my life accordingly. I live frugally. I do not go all out and celebrate a big gig, because I recognize that big gig's probably going to help me hold myself over for a while. There are definitely slow seasons and busy seasons for me. The holiday season is always super hectic for me. I know that, from October through December, I'm working like every day. It's going to be really intense. So I know that the money I make during that period is going to hold me out through April, because April, January through April, people just don't spend as much money.
Yeah, so you're thinking way ahead with this stuff then.
Yeah. So it's like that, that helps tide me over, and I still get work, but oftentimes, I'll have a certain, if I make this much a month on average, then I'm doing great. And it really has to be on average, because I definitely don't hit that benchmark every month. And sometimes I just break the stratosphere on a random month, so it's like a very, it can be pretty stressful. Like sometimes I could go 2 weeks without a commission, and it's like, it's been 2 weeks and I just feel like, oh, I'm starting to freak out. Like, it's been 2 weeks and I don't have any money in my bank account, but I've been working every day on other things. So that's another reason why it's important to make your own opportunities. Give people a reason to pay you money for things, because like people, people find me. They find me through my art, they find me through my YouTube, whatever social media, and then they commission me. But it's like, that's why I have to be posting every day, because I need people to see my stuff. And every now and then, one of those people is a customer. I never expect people to be, but yeah.
So that's the key. Like you don't, presumably when you started doing this, you were reaching out to people a lot, but now your focus is on just putting the content out. It speaks for itself and people reach out to you, and then that's how the business happens.
Yeah. I do almost no outreach for most of my services. The only outreach I do is workshops. I have so I'll like reach out to local libraries and stuff for that. And then when I attend certain events, I tend to meet people through networking, and that, starts an organic conversation that might lead to work. But yes, I do very little like cold calling or cold emailing, which I recognize is like a very awesome thing for my business, like that. Like I don't have to depend on that as much. Now it would benefit me to do more of that, I'm sure. But it's also, I gotta say, it's really difficult to go in blind with somebody and convince them that they have a need for an etch-a-sketch artist. It's kind of a tough sell.
Listen to me. This is why you need an etch-a-sketch in your life.
It's a little bit of a, so it's like, sometimes I've connected with companies that might like follow me on social media. So it's like, okay, you already find enough value in me to follow me. So maybe let's see if we can start some kind of a project or dialogue from here. We can work something out. So yeah, that's about, I try to do like warm emails instead of cold emails. But yes, that's the thing about Etch-a-Sketch. It definitely, there is a lot of value that can be provided in it, especially for social media marketing campaigns. Like Etch-a-Sketch gets fantastic engagement. People remember it. People freak out when they see something cool drawn on it. It gets people to stick around and watch the whole video. So there's a lot to be said for, you know, why companies have hired me in the past. But yes, to go, you know, I don't think I could, you know, drive down the street to my local pizza shop and tell them, you know, I think I've got the greatest video for you to post about your pizza shop. Like it's a bit of a difficult sell for people who aren't like high level corporate. Like it seems like high level corporate is more interested in like the kooky post.
I think, okay, I'm going to slightly disagree with you on this, but only for one reason. I think the more famous and well-known you get, the more that this will be requested. So taking your pizza thing as an example, right? Let's say a year from now, 2 years from now, right, you get even more recognition, more, you know, well-known. I presume that when you do these etch-a-sketches as well, like somewhere on there is your logo, your name quite prominent, right?
Yeah, I usually have some kind of a banner, yeah.
If there's a way that you make these kind of available to like, you know, everyone sort of, so to speak, then, you know, I think you'll probably get more people wanting to get it because it'll be like, oh, hey, yeah, I can have this, in the window of my pizza shop. And it's like, this was made by Princess Etch. And you know what I mean? Like I could just see that happening one day. You know?
Sure. Yeah. And that's, you know, that's another reason why from a marketing perspective that I raise my prices every year, because I also want to reward people for being early adapters. Like I want to like reward people and make them understand that their work will only like have more perceived value over time. And it's true because I'm, you know, I also am learning more every day, and I'm growing as an artist, and for all sorts of other reasons, I have to raise my pricing every year. But yes, I never want to like cut my pricing because I don't want everybody to suddenly feel like I've conned them. You know, I don't want to like, oh, well, this used to be a $200 product, but now it's only $100. And, you know, to everyone who paid $200, you idiots.
No, I think your idea about having tiers to this is a much more sensible idea. And I totally agree with you. I think that, for example, you take Apple. When was the last time you saw Apple, you know, lower their prices? They never did that, you know, because if you do that, it affects the perception of your product. And I'm sorry, I could talk to you all day about marketing, but I'll try not to. But
it's interesting
agree with you. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, because I see businesses doing that, you know, and the reality of dropping prices is that, like, especially for businesses, if you do that, you're not actually dropping the price. Like the markup is the markup for a reason. Like what they actually. Like I remember one time, I think I might have told this on the podcast before, but one time I did a very brief internship for like what was it, like a suitcase luggage company, worldwide company, and basically that gave me access to all their, you know, price sheets. So I saw like how much they actually spent creating it, and the markup was ridiculous. Like if a suitcase was created for like £15, they sold it for like £215. You know, it was huge. And so like I looked at that and I was like, wow. So like in the store when they charge it for like 50%, they're still making a huge markup. It's not a discount at all. It's just like, well, sales tactic, I guess, your marketing tactic. But
it's really interesting to think about. And I have to think about that a lot because there's a fully understandable perception of how much an etch-a-sketch costs. And that's like a big hill I have to cross. Like I have to justify, like, listen, I'm selling a piece of art made on a $15 toy for $1,000. And like, I need to convince people that they're not just buying a $15 product, they're buying $1,000 product.
Right.
And, you know, for me, I'm able to justify that by explaining, you know, the time it takes me and all that. But even when I do like some of the work I do, like for time-lapse videos, only might take me a few hours, or it might take me half an hour. And it's like, well, I charge a much higher price point for my time-lapse videos. And you know, some people might be upset if they learned that it only took me an hour to film a video, and they'll think, oh, well, you're, you know, so it's like, I have to like get over those mind blocks. Like, no, like there's a lot more value than the amount of time it took me.
No,
Yeah.
I completely understand when you're coming from on that. I had to learn that with marketing, freelancing. You know, what you said about raising your prices every year. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, I recently negotiated with someone who was offering me a much lower price than I would normally go for, and I just said, I just can't drop to that because of the time and effort it goes into it.
Yeah.
And you know, from a logical standpoint, if you've got X amount of people paying you a certain rate and then someone wants to come in and give you a much lower rate, it's like, why would I accept that? Like, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. Yeah. I should let you know that I gotta go in about 13 minutes. I've got something at 1, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any final things you had to say.
I kind of figured, and you've been very accommodating, so I really do appreciate it. Yeah, I got 2 final questions actually.
Sure.
First question is, I want to sort of understand your process for sort of just creating an etch-a-sketch. Like, what's the general process that you go through?
Sure. So it depends on what I'm creating. Say if I'm doing a commissioned work, I'll usually, after we determine the size of the etch-a-sketch I'm going to use, I'll take the reference photo provided for me and I will scale it down to be like a 1-to-1 scale with the drawing that I'm doing. So I am very closely studying the original reference photo as I work. When I begin a drawing, I try to do the most difficult part first, because if I make a mistake, I want to make it early. So I will lay out usually like the line work or like the contours of the drawing to figure out the proportions and get all that down pat. And then it takes longer to do the shading, but the shading's like the easy part because it's kind of methodical. I can kind of just turn my brain off for a while, work on those minute details. If I'm doing a portrait, I'll work on the facial features first because you want to capture their likeness. If it doesn't look like them, it doesn't matter how nice the drawing looks, they're not going to like it. And then I will, so once I finish the drawing, then there's the task of making it permanent. So then I will disassemble the Etch-a-Sketch. I have to like pop the knobs off, and then I saw the Etch-a-Sketch apart. Here's my saw right here.
Oh, cool.
And then so I saw the Etch-a-Sketch apart. Here's a drawing that I won't show the drawing because it's not released yet, but I popped the knobs off already. So you see these little tiny posts. So I'm going to saw the frame off right here. And then there's like an internal box that holds the powder inside. So then I saw through that box as well. Depending on the Etch-a-Sketch, some of them you can lift the glass off, but it really depends. And then I disassemble it. I clean out the Etch-a-Sketch. I make sure to remove the internal components so that the knobs are no longer connected to the stylus. So then you can turn the knobs freely, but it won't create any new lines on the screen because I removed the stylus. And then I will put it all back together. I'll clean it all up. And then I will photograph the work for my own personal archives and record. And then I package it all up. I've got a whole process for that. I use a lot of bubble wrap and then send it on its merry way to the client. And that's kind of the long and the short of it. That's a commission, a typical commission of mine. That's how I go about doing it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Wow. The biggest life lesson I've learned so far. I feel like I could answer with like 30 things. But I guess the one that comes to mind just from this conversation is that you're the master of your own destiny in a lot of ways. I understand that, I got where I am with help. And I know that I didn't come from absolutely nothing, but I do believe that we all have agency in our lives. We all have the ability to use our situations in life and make something that we want from it. So I took my life and decided that I wanted to pursue this silly career in Etch-a-Sketch. And it took a lot of hard work and it took some help, but I was able to do it. And so if there's anything that, something that I've learned in life through my own experience is that it is possible to pursue your dreams. And you may not necessarily know what that dream is. You might find out what that dream is while you're working toward it. My dream is pretty simple. My dream is, well, maybe it may not be considered simple to some, but it is to be self-sufficient off of an Etch-a-Sketch. And that dream might change in a few years, who knows? But for right now, that's the dream that I'm pursuing. And I think that I was able to do it because I put in the time. So, you know, to anybody who is working as a creative, I'm trying to find a nice, succinct way to sum it up. But basically, you're the master of your own destiny. You can make things happen. You can open doors. You can create doors. You can make the life that you want to live in some way. And it doesn't mean that you're going to become a millionaire being, you know, doing whatever you're doing. But I think that you can be happy if you push for what you want to do. So. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. As we draw things to a close today, do you have any upcoming projects or maybe some final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
As for upcoming projects, I have this dream to someday etch-a-sketch all Pokemon. All of them. It's going to be ridiculous. I'm focusing on the 151 right now.
Right. Awesome.
I have my best friend back home in Michigan. He's a video editor, and we want to etch-a-sketch the Pokérap. That's like my dream in life, is to etch-a-sketch the Pokérap. It'll take a long time. I'm only like 15% of the way there. But that's my dream. I'm working on a series of drawings right now, which I'm not ready to talk about them yet because the project is still really young. I don't want to jinx myself. But that's what I'm working on now. And I forgot the other thing you said.
Just maybe if you had some final thoughts, but yeah.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. This has been a pleasure. And yeah, if anybody is ever interested in anything regarding Etch-a-Sketch, or even just being a freelance artist, or something that I spoke about in relation to this podcast today, feel free to reach out to me or to Christian, and you can forward anything to me specifically. I'm always really happy to start a dialogue. I believe firmly that artists should try to help other artists. This is something, we're not in this cutthroat competitive world. We can all exist together. We can all establish our own niches and establish our own value. So so I'm super happy to talk to people and provide any advice that I can from my limited experience as a freelancer.
Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And I want to say to all my listeners, make sure to go check out Princess Etch. You can find her everywhere online. She's very, very clearly very good at branding herself, and she does fantastic work. And so make sure you go check her out. And if you're listening to the Christian Reeve podcast on YouTube, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you know what to do. Leave us a review. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know who you would like to see on the show next, what topics you would like to hear, all of that jazz. And thank you very much for listening. Until next time, peace out, one love. I'll see you in the next one.